Okay, we're on. Hello, people. We're on and broadcasting.
They are languages uttered, they are rotary and gold. They are understanding their letters. They are languages uttered, they are rotary and gold. They are understanding their letters. There are tangents, they are yawning in the dark. They are rank and bitter anger, they are all fortified. They are fear and blind suspicion, they are apathy and pride. They are dark and sober-foreboding, and they're also very wise. They are fear and blind suspicion, they are apathy and pride. They are dark and sober-foreboding, and they're also very wise. Let us build a bridge of view. Let us
You can hear yourself pinging. You know you're pinging.
I fixed it.
Okay.
Where we're off and bound today, we will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. Are you guys there? This is a World Call In, listening to Bridges Programming. And we are here with Susan Comont.
I'm here.
Dennis Carius.
Hi, Dennis. Oh, hi, Susan. Dennis is here, too.
Jeff 2. Hello, Jeff 2.
How are you, Jeff, Susan, Dennis? Good to be here.
Oh, hi, Jeff.
And I'm here as another one of the people who flap their gums. I'm Jeff Beller. How are you? Okay, well, I'm going to try to set this up so we can hear this. We have a guest in the studio with us, Jeff 2, and I'm going to get his, let me just give you a quick house cleaning thing here. We're on Google Hangouts, well, actually Hangouts on Air, and you can contact us on their Skype line. Also, we're on, you can call us at 347-215-6731 if you choose to go on to World Call In line. And we also are on a chat room that is called Bridge to Humanity on Blog Talk. I think this will be our last Blog Talk because we're going to be moving over to strictly Hangouts online and Skype. Hangouts on Air. So we're learning how to do this stuff. Okay, the topic tonight, Susan, you want to read the topic tonight? Yes.
People can find us. I know you have a cough, but try not to cough into the mic.
Are you there?
I don't know. I just said that it will still be under the name Bridges Programming.
Right. It's still always Bridges Programming. And you'll be able to find us anyway. I'm going to try to put this thing over here to make it a little easier to deal with this, so we hear it as we're working.
If you go to bridgesprogramming.com, everything will be there. All the programs, and we're setting it up so you can actually hear the live program there also. So it won't just be podcast. Levi's working on that right now to get that to work properly. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, you're coming across. Yeah, I'm just trying to get this so we can listen to it.
About 12 hours with him yesterday, going over all kinds of technical stuff and other stuff. And that's one of the things that we need to get started on the site, on rigidprogramming.com. So everything's going there now. It'll simplify things a little bit for us, and maybe also for people that are trying to find the programming. I hope so.
Now, listen, the Pope may just call in. There's a good chance the Pope may listen to us today. And we have been listening to him, and we're reading his encyclical pretty much on the air, because he must have been listening to our programming, because he said everything he's saying, we have said on our programs. So I'm going to see if we can see. I'm going to try to get to show you what's going on here.
Greetings.
Okay, I'm going to have to move over here a little bit like this. Okay, now you've got two talking heads on this thing. Jeff read the encyclical yesterday, and Susan, you want to read on where we left off? And anybody who wants to join us on the chat room, they can. Bridge to Humanity. This Pope is really amazing guy. Dennis, you had something about Cuba too there today. Well, it's all your encyclical is actually going into where we're reading about Cuba, other countries, right?
I'm not sure who you're addressing.
Well, you said that we were talking about Cuba earlier. You mentioned the fact that you did it when you came with the encyclical. We said we're about halfway through it, and it's talking about other countries.
I think you must compete. I said we're halfway through it, but I don't know what you're referring to.
Well, where did we leave off yesterday?
Okay, I can start where we left off. It's section 5, justice between the generations. And I can start reading if you want to see where we're at.
A lot of it was talking about in the Bible that it's not just humans that the Bible deals with, it's other creatures. And if you look at a lot of, in the Old Testament particularly, it deals with stewardship of the land. And we are part of, God's creatures on the planet. And since we have, for want of a better word, more intelligence, or at least we believe we do, that, we have tended to look at ourselves as dominating the planet. And I think what they're trying to do is get away from that idea of dominating nature to more of a husbandry and stewardship of nature. Because when we were, a small population spread widely across the planet, which is now we're a large population spread widely across the planet even more, that the encyclical deals with the fact that, we do have an impact on the creatures of the earth and the planet. And those are things like pollution and, issues such as, clear-cut foresting, deforestation, those type of things. So those things have an effect upon the creatures on the planet, besides, looking at just, well, it's just for the benefit of humanity. Because in a nutshell, if we all, kill every fish in the sea and every animal in the forest, all humans are going to lose, that it's a food source, unless you don't eat meat or fish, but most people do. Also, if you're just a plant-based food source, if you're using pesticides and you're over pulling the water out of aquifers and things like that, this has an effect upon the creatures on the planet, as well as a direct effect on humans. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Summary of the predicament that the whole human population. And as you say, there are more of us than ever before, and we're having an impact on the earth. It's like an animal, you know, all over the earth, and allowed the sky, some four have their hands in the atmosphere, and some have stories about this planet Earth. We can determine through study of theology.
What's that?
Music or something.
Yeah, I was actually trying to get all God's creatures on, but I couldn't. I don't know how to work this part of it. So
Let me,
I just wanted to say, and I complete this thought, that you've got a situation now where we are a natural force as a species, and we're altering the climate, and there is a consensus on this, and Pope Francis is lending his voice and his position and his soapbox to this consensus, and he's saying we have to now make some really good decisions about what we're going to do from this point on, so that we don't continue down a path of destroying our planet, you know, for the sake of economic profit, which is, you know, kind of in a nutshell what I think we're doing. You can read the encyclical, and I think you can get the impression Pope Francis, you can see it that way also. And I think the person is not really going to read his words. And you know, he said, we're at the point that justice between the generations, section 5, and he asked the question, what kind of world do we want to leave to those who come after us, the children who are now growing up? You know, that is the question. Do you want to think like the Native Americans of North America and South America used to say their philosophy? They were thinking 7 generations ahead about what their impact would be. You know, we're not even thinking about the next generation, or even maybe next week. Anyway, we're at section 161, and he goes on to say, Pope Francis in his encyclical, doomsday predictions can no longer be met with irony or disdain. They may well be leaving the coming generation the greed, desolation, and filth. The pace of consumption, waste, and environmental change has so stretched the planet's capacity that our contemporary lifestyle, unsustainable as it is, can only precipitate catastrophes such as those which even now periodically occur in different areas of the world. The effects of the present imbalance can only be reduced by our decisive action here and now. We need to reflect on our accountability before those who will have to endure the dire consequences. Our difficulty in taking up this challenge seriously has much to do with an ethical and cultural decline, which has accompanied the deterioration of the environment. Men and women of our postmodern world run the risk of rampant individualism, and many problems in society are connected with today's self-centered culture of instant gratification. We see this in the crisis of family and social ties and difficulty recognizing these groups. Parents can be prone to impulsive and wasteful consumption, which benefits their children who find it increasingly difficult to acquire a home of their own and build a family. Furthermore, our inability to think seriously about future generations is linked to our inability to broaden the scope of our present interests and to give consideration to those who remain excluded from development. Let us not only keep the poor of the future in mind, but also today's poor, whose life on this earth is brief and who cannot keep on waiting. And, quote, in addition to a fair sense of intergenerational solidarity, there is also an urgent moral need for a renewed sense of intra-generational solidarity. We're on chapter 5, lines of approach and action. And he goes on, so Francis goes on to say, so far I have attempted to take stock of our present situation, pointing to the cracks and the planet that we inhabit, as well as the profoundly human causes of environmental degradation. Although the contemplation of reality in itself has already shown the need for a change in direction and other course of action, now we shall try to outline the major paths of dialogue which can help us escape the spiral of self-destruction which currently engulfs us. Dialogue on the environment in the international community. Beginning in the middle of the last century and overcoming many difficulties, there has been a growing conviction that our planet is a homeland and that humanity is one people living in a common home. An interdependent world not only makes us more conscious of the negative effects of certain lifestyles and models of production and consumption, which affect us all. More importantly, it motivates us to ensure that solutions are proposed from a global perspective and not simply to defend the interests of a few countries. Interdependence obliges us to think of one world with a common plan. Yet the same ingenuity which has brought about enormous technological progress has so far proved incapable of finding effective ways of dealing with grave environmental and social problems worldwide. A global consensus is essential for confronting deeper problems, which cannot be resolved by unilateral action on the part of individual countries. Such a consensus could lead, for example, to planning a sustainable and diversified agriculture, developing renewable and less polluting forms of energy, encouraging a more efficient use of energy, promoting a better management of marine and forest resources, and ensuring universal access to drinking water. We know that technology based on the use of highly polluting fossil fuels, especially coal, but also oil and to electricity gas, needs to be progressively replaced without delay. Until greater progress is made in developing widely accessible sources of renewable energy, it is legitimate to choose a less harmful alternative or to find short-term solutions. But the international community has still not reached adequate agreement about the responsibility for paying the cost of this energy transition. In recent decades, environmental issues appear to rise to considerable public debate and have elicited a variety of committed and generous civic responses. Politics and business have been slow to react in a way commensurate with the urgency of the challenges facing our world. Although the post-industrial period may well be remembered as one of the most irresponsible in history, nonetheless, there is a reason to hope that humanity at the dawn of the 21st century will be remembered for having generously shouldered its grave responsibility. Worldwide, the ecological movement has made significant advances, thanks also to the efforts of many organizations of civil society. It is impossible here to mention them all or to review the history of their contributions, but thanks to their efforts, environmental questions have increasingly found a place on public agendas and encouraged more far-sighted approaches. This notwithstanding, recent world summits on the environment have not lived up to expectations because due to lack of political will, they are unable to reach truly meaningful and effective global agreements on the environment. I'm going to pause there and I mean, you have to assert that the reason there's no political will is because it's the will of the economics that is dominant.
Okay. I was going to inject that earlier. By the way, you're not listening to Susan or us. You're listening to the Pope. This is not a debate with the Pope. This is after his commune with God, and I don't know if that's the case, but he's also been looking around. He has people all over the world trying to come out with the truth about humanity. And what he's come to the conclusion that he's willing to step out and put his neck on the chopping block. And you can see he is putting his neck on the chopping block, because every politician, even if they're Catholic or They are really upset with this guy because he's saying our economic system is in fact controlling our political system, which is in fact committing suicide by the damage they are creating to other human species, other people of this planet, and our other species of life on the planet, plus our air, our water, and our soil. He is actually saying it. Now, if Obama would say that, they would probably shoot him. If Putin said it, again, the economic system...
It'd be an invasion.
It'd be an invasion. We'd shoot him again. If Jesus...
Economically, which is what they're doing.
What they do. Or if Cuba says something that we don't like your economic system, they put sanctions against Cuba. And what they do is the same thing they did with Putin. And what the Pope is saying, stop this insanity. Look at the damage you guys are doing with fracking, with coal, with oil. You know better. And if you don't do something, you're going to wipe out your species. He's not worried about wiping out the planet. He's worried about wiping out all the species that God created on this planet. That's what he's worried about. He's not saying the world's going to come to an end. He's saying to you that the species are going to be wiped out because of our misbehaved way we're handling the environment.
It's because of bad choices.
Well, it's also driven by,
Bad choices. And we're so entertained by what we can do with our technology, economics, and our money, that we're not looking to see what the damage that this kind of preoccupation is doing at this point in history. In this point in human history, he says in here, and this is so, I'm rereading a part of the previous paragraph, where Pope Francis says, we're talking about our energy sources. And he's saying, until greater progress is made in developing widely accessible sources of renewable energy. Well, we have everything we need now. It can be widely accessible. What's stopping it is economics. I mean, it's easy to see the pressure that the fossil fuel industries are putting, on slowing and halting renewable energy access worldwide. It's a superior form of energy source, and it's being, and it has been suppressed. For what? Like now, it's probably close to 60 years.
Right.
And it's not that the technology isn't ready. It's that the economics is not.
Okay, I want to interject that the Pope is right on, but to get to where we need, I think, to get to where we need to get, we have to have a measure, just like gravity was measured just 400 years ago. And 600 years ago, we thought the world was flat. And all of a sudden, you get this, it wasn't Columbus, but the history says Columbus discovered America and the world was round. And then only 400 years ago, the obvious thing that we had gravity was discovered by some other guy named Newton. And then they were able to name it, put it into the vocabulary and measure it. Actually, it was not Newton. It was other people before him. And of course, the Catholic Church at that point in time. Right.
History, or Earth history. And there are obvious things like this still around us that we have not named or given a base to, things that have to do with the survival of our species on this planet. And it's a simple assertion that we need food, shelter, and education. And everybody has a right to that.
And they have a right to that, by the way, hold on, I want to interject this because everybody, that's obvious. Everybody is getting their education, food, and shelter, but they're getting it in some cases to stay alive. They're getting it in some cases for 10 and 20 and 30 and 40 hours, 10 hours a day or 15 hours a day or 18 hours a day just to get those basic needs met. And that's called slavery, and that's not going to work. And that's the problem we're running into. It's not that they don't get the basic needs met, it's how much work with today's technology. And a lot of the people, if you go on to different sites around the world, they have calculated this, and they say to get your basic needs met, it would only take about an hour a day of work. And you can define work differently, by the way, or you have to define work differently, but to get all the basic needs met. However, if you want more, you can work more. But in other words, no one has to sit around for 23 hours and do nothing. They can't. But if everybody puts into the system to grow gardens and to help build homes and to educate people and to bring up children, that's part of putting back to the system. And 1 hour a day, if everybody did it and they thought about how we don't kill each other instead of how we can make more money, we would change the whole system. So that's where this show is brought to you by a human renewable energy measure, which is exactly what the Pope is just missing in his statement. We need a measurement for that. And that's where we're headed for. That's why we do this program. Bridges Programming opens up a humanitarian platform for everybody. The biggest platform so far that we see for humanitarian thinking. And I'm not religious, but the Pope come out with everything we've been saying for 2 years on programming. Now, we got to give this guy a lot of credit. And because he's got such a big soapbox.
Sounds like you're patting yourself on the back.
No, but I want to make sure that the Pope took the platform, or has the same platform that we're trying to put out there. He doesn't have the measure yet, because I don't think,
He's not talking about measurements as far as I can tell in any of this yet. But, it's important to think things that every human being finds essential, for our social interaction, like time, our normal length and width measurements, the measuring of
a life,
ounces and pounds
and life. We all live. Life is the important thing. We only have a certain span of life. It's part of nature. You can't change that. And the average age, if you have a reasonably good water supply and medical conditions, is about 80 years of age. Some will live 100, a little over. But basically, 80 years is the average span of life living comfortably. Jeff had some things he wanted to say.
Yeah, I wanted to get back to the issue of dealing with the planet. And remember, we have very different systems on this planet, but really the economic system is the same. So what we're looking at is changing the mindset to have an objective energy measurement for human beings for the maintenance of the human life that you have. It's a gift of God. The Pope, I'm sure, would agree with that. The fact of the matter is, what they're changing in the encyclical is the idea that if we don't start changing our thinking in terms of being inclusive and looking at the whole picture, some people call it the big picture. I'll give a rather simplistic understanding that kind of guided me. Years and years ago, when I was a park ranger, we were given a piece of property, and you have the interaction between humans and animals. You have to lay out trails so as not to disturb certain animals in terms of their home, and you have to have parking lots and recreational abilities for people. And one of the things we did, a simple thing that we did, was to plant honeysuckle to bring in songbirds, because people go birding and people like to see birds. But we're also benefiting those birds by putting a particular plant on. Humans, for want of another higher form of life, really are the only ones on the planet that can interact and change by our activity on a wide scale by the things we do. The other life on this planet. For example, we drop a nuclear bomb to test it in a desert area, you kill a certain amount of plants and radiate the area, and creatures go through, and it impacts their development. These are the things we've talked about. They even make
they drop them in water too.
Yeah, we pollute the water. Perfect example is the Exxon Valdez disaster, which is, again, people think, well, it must be over because I haven't heard much about it. That's, for hundreds, if not maybe thousands of years, that's going to impact the ecosystem up there. It may look fine on the surface, but remember, we're dealing with intricate chemicals and things like that.
And wait a minute, they're also dropping bombs in the ocean to test them, which are killing hundreds of thousands of species in the oceans just to test the bombing, which is insane. Why do we want to bomb things? I mean, this is ridiculous.
We know bombs work, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is... and
they work very effectively at killing.
But they're killing all kinds of whales and species that have no reason to be killed in the name of theoretical freedom. I mean, this is insanity. I'm going to take a little break. We'll be back in about 5 minutes. And this is the part of the insanity that this little song brings up, because we are all so esoteric in our thinking process that we don't see the reality of life. This is called Hot Dog Heaven by Alien Folklife. And we'll be back in about 5 minutes. Dennis, do you have any questions you want to bring up after the break?
Dennis has questions, but can we wait till after this song?
Certainly. We'll be back in about 5 minutes. Stand by.
Good. Thanks.
I'm an ordinary new age guy with 3 kids and a wife, looking for the answers to the mystery.
See, I think it may still be recording.
Are we still on? Or we're not video?
And on Wednesdays I go drumming with my new age friends. I know that life's a journey and everything must change. Something happened yesterday that left me feeling strange. I was going to buy some crystals at my favorite store downtown, when I turned the corner and looked up. This is what I found. My new age crystal store is hot dog heaven now, where once I searched for inner peace, innards from a cow. They'll still make you one with everything, but it's not the same somehow. It's all instead of going up, hot dog heaven now. My inner child was angry, but he cranked, he was incensed, but my inner parent told him there are no accidents. Some cosmic force has caused the plans I made to be reversed, and brought me to this hot dog stand, perhaps not for the worst. Before I gave up eating, by the dozen, but what if in a corner like this hot dog was my cousin? Joseph Campbell said, for your listening, you ought to follow. But this struggle was flow, surely don't. It's awful hard to swallow. My new age crystal bookstore is hot dog heaven now, where once I searched for innards, there's innards from a cow. They'll still make you want to say, but it's not the same somehow. It's nothing not each year. And hot dog heaven now.
Heaven, there be a hot dog God, full paved with mustard, to hot dog land, with a wiener in each hand. There's a hot dog heaven, there a tofu hell.
I think it's upside down. Yes, that was upside down.
Hear the winner's bell.
It's kind of backwards. Is it a sticker?
The night.
Well, it's because it's a sticker, so it's yeah, you're not gonna get it.
Night wage, Bristol.
I hope you can read
Bristol,
that.
This hot dog heaven now. For once I've heard 3 minute piece. There's winners from a cow. They'll make you one with everything. It's not the same somehow. Instead of dog heaven now. Not recovery. Not earrings. And not ash cans. Hot dog heaven now. And we are back here. Whoa, I don't know if we're back yet. Let me just see you get us back here. I think we're back here. There's Susan's on. Okay, we'll do this now. We're on the air. How are you? And we are back here with Susan Comont, Dennis Carius, Jeff 2 over here.
Hi.
And I'm Jeff Beller. And Jeff 2 is his real last name, so it's sort of interesting.
T-E-W, not T-W-O.
T-E-W. And
Do you want me to move forward a little more?
yeah, I do, but I wanted to see if Dennis. Go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, Dennis has something.
No, yeah, just one question. I really like that song. I mean, what if in a former life a hot dog was my cousin? You know, would we want to kill? I mean, this is interesting because in the Bible, I should ask the Pope this question. In the Bible, you know where it says, "Thou shalt not kill"? It doesn't say, "Thou shalt not kill" human beings. Like, you know, it's very specific when it says, "Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods." It just says, "Thou shalt not kill." And I'm just wondering, should we do what they're doing over in India, where they have a lot of vegetarians? These Hindus are vegans. They don't eat meat. So when you go to McDonald's over there and you sit down and boy, those hot dogs and hamburgers taste great, but there's no meat. I mean, our technology is moving forward. We can do a good job of eating vegetarian food, and even if you want it to look like meat. So my question is it right for us to kill? I mean, would we want to kill our cat or our dog? I would say no. So why do we kill these animals when we can eat, you know, like I said, hot dogs and hamburgers and all this stuff, and it tastes just the same, but you're not killing any animals? That's my question.
Yeah, well, you're
So your question.
that Pope Francis would agree with you that he's trying to present that people need to draw more deeply on their compassion, their realize their connection to nature, that we can't live without the balances that we're starting to understand that are part of nature. We need to understand them better. We need to be, as Jeff too was saying, we need to be in solidarity about protecting our environment around us and the other creatures that are living on the same planet we're living on. And, you know, tread lightly and, you know, try not to, you know, destroy the very, place that is actually making it possible for our species to live and prosper. Well, we're starting to get to the point.
Okay.
We are at the point.
Okay, well, hold it. I want to rephrase. I'd like to rephrase Dennis's question to the God of everything that tells us what's going on, the God of Google. And I'm going to ask Google a question. You ready for this? Ready? Hi, Google. Hold it. I'm going to ask a question. Let me ask this question of let me ask this question of Google. Then, are you ready for this? Is the Pope a vegetarian? Will Pope Paul go vegan? Or, okay, Huffington Post. Let me see. The Huffington Post is asking this question. And the answer to this question is, will the Pope Paul go vegan? Well, you can read that. Go ahead, Jeff. Would you read
I
that?
jest not, never having been one to adhere to any organized religion, In fact, I have an utter contempt for them. I find myself nonetheless more than a little happy to hear Pope Francis has made global climate change a top concern. According to the Associated Press, Francis and his top aides have left us in no doubt that they are listening to scientific evidence when it comes to climate change. Well, you can knock me over with a feather. Really?
Oh, I messed it up.
Can I interject here, and not wanting to offend my vegetarian friends? I'm not a vegetarian, and I think that's a good choice for some people, but not for all. Okay, anyway, no doubt they are listening to scientific evidence when it comes to climate change. Well, you can knock me over with a feather. Really? In more astonishing revelations, Francis has said, it is man, emphasis on man, who has slapped nature in the face. Moreover, goes on to say, we have exploited nature too much, you think. However, one question does loom. Call it the cow in the room, if you will. Will the Pope and the rest of his aides go vegan? Considering the industry of turning animals into meat for consumption is one of the largest contributors to greenhouse gases, one would think they would. Or would they be, gotta go back. Or would they be like multiple unmentionable environmental organizations, see cowspiracy, still stick their heads in the proverbial cow?
Okay. Well, the fact of the matter is, Dennis, yeah, go ahead.
In some of what we've already read, he addressed this, and he says that yes, we've done domestication of the animals that we need for our food, and he says that this has to be done in a reasonable way, a humane way, and he sees the need for variety of. I don't think because you're not a vegan or a vegetarian that somehow you don't treasure nature and the planet. We are omnivores. We can eat anything. Meat,
well said, Susan.
And the conversion from plant matter to meat, it happens, in the animal's body. It's still plant. It's just been converted to meat. So you can make a case that maybe if you're vegetarian, you're treading more lightly on the planet. But he's also saying in the text here, the Pope says you can go to extremes with this kind of thought process and just keep dwelling on that thought process. And as Dennis said, there are whole religions that advocate vegetarianism, and that's great. But still, you have to, allow for choice, and not to the point of demanding that everybody be a vegetarian or a meat eater. People have evolved to do either one, and that's the way it is.
Nature, in fact, if you look at nature, if the Pope is talking about nature, and you want to look at nature as nature is, lions eat gazelles. Lions don't go to the, make smoothies out of grass. But one of the things, as humans have looked at, and we do have both sides of the picture here. I can give an example. It's probably better to eat more plant-based things than meat-based, and you should probably reduce it. But the fact of the matter is that there are people who eat meat, and we have to deal with just like nature, we have to feed ourselves. Lions don't, care about gazelles except for, doing what nature has taught them to do, which is to take the weaker ones and cull the herd and those type of things, which is part of the process.
But it's all energy.
Yes.
Whether it's plant-based or the animals eat the plants. It's all solar energy. Without the sun, the plants wouldn't be here, the animals wouldn't be here, and we wouldn't be here. We are based on energy units.
And humans have created food sources out of natural things. We've cultivated plants, and we do, domesticate animals, and we do take them and we do use them for food. Now, this is something that should be looked at because, and I, as a person who did eat meat, I remember years ago looking at some of these films on the things that go on in slaughterhouses. And I think it's ridiculous that cows that eat grass, which grows naturally, are fed corn taking the corn out of the system that we use to feed people, making it expensive. Although I don't eat as much corn as I used to, but cows eat grass. Why are we feeding them corn?
Okay, hold it. So go ahead.
That's one of the problems of economic stress on a system that is basically meant to help provide the good needs to more of a population. But the advertising is that this isn't good enough. We want meat with lots of fat in it so that it has a certain flavor. And in order to do that, they fatten the cattle with the corn, which is something they don't even digest it well. And it's a very and that's probably why it gets stored as a lot of fat in their bodies. I'm not sure how they even metabolize it, but that's all because of propaganda and pressures about what tastes right or what's better.
And that's part of the advertising. That's part of the advertising. That's part of the advertising scheme, which is part of the economy to let a few people make a lot more money.
That's not humane. He's saying these things domestication has to be done in a humane manner, and that's what. And the same thing with genetically modified plants. This has to be done with careful consideration. Are these kind of plants going to be damaging to the larger ecology? You can't just willy-nilly make a lot more corn to grow all over the world, and then and at the exclusion of all the diversity. These are pressures that capitalist economy does. Quantity, monocultures, propaganda, increasing people's desire for certain things. This is where the money is made, and putting more and more of the production in the hands of fewer and fewer. This is the tendency of our economics now, and it's not a tendency that's going toward the salvation, the sustainability of our species, and this is a bigger picture. It's not going to sustain the chemical, organic ecosystems that we thrive in. It's just not. It's changing them as we speak, and this needs to be understood better. There are scientists constantly working on this and trying to give us guidance. And clearly, the Pope has had access to the most recent science, and he's listening, and he's trying to now, in his own words, tell everyone what he understands and what he hopes for.
And a lot of people, Sue, a lot of people have been trying to say this for a long, long time. And what happens is mainstream media is normally bought and paid for by the powers that be, including the politicians. They buy these guys and they refuse to let them try to fix the problem we are having. And the problem is GMOs, because of a huge Monsanto lobbying group that's enormous, and that's definitely special interest. And then they've changed. They also changed.
If you own the seed, like Monsanto, if you own the seed, you demand that nobody can use them unless they buy them from you, and you're becoming the dominant provider for that particular crop, whatever it is. You make the money, and you're cornered in the market.
And what's happened with that, but the reason this is happening is because they are allowed to patent a thing that's been going on for millions of years. Seeds are nothing that you could patent, and then the mind, who's figured out a way of genetically modifying these seeds. Those are years and years of thousands and thousands of humans coming up with better and better and better ideas. How can you possibly patent something that belongs to all of humanity? And if you took the money out of that, the profit margin out of that, you would still probably have genetically modified products, but not to the detriment of humanity and not to the detriment of damage. Where if you had it where we shared within this technology, and I mean, of course, you're going to have people making more money, but you're not going to have it at the detriment of humanity or detriment or degradation of the water and the soil. I mean, this is the problem. And now, of course, the air. And you should, if you can possibly look up this.
Let's go back to Pope Francis' words.
Okay, I want to give out the phone number here, and the chat room is open on Bridge to Humanity. The phone number is 347-215-6731. The chat room is open. If you're hearing this Wednesday, the 1st of July, we are live right now. After that, when you hear this program, it will strictly be podcasted. So I'm just giving you a heads up that if you're hearing it right now and you want to call in right now, and most people just don't have the time, because we'll get the emails on this after the fact, because people just sort of stumble into the programming. But if you have the time to look at it and want to be involved with it, those are the numbers you can call. We'd love to hear what you would like to say. But go ahead, Sue.
I'm going to try to read, quite a bit. Is that okay? Because we do get to the point where he addresses the impact of economics.
Okay, I think Dennis wants to break in a minute.
This is just real quick, just to explain something that Jeff was talking about, that what we're doing in this world. Over in Africa, thousands of children were dying just because they started putting water for sale. Instead of where you could just go and get water out of the ground, they were taking the water out of the ground and then they were charging families. And if they couldn't afford it, and the children were not drinking water, they were dying. So that's just an example of what Jeff was talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, Susan, sorry to put
No, not at all. We're continuing with Pope Francis' words here. In the 1992 Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro is worth mentioning. It proclaimed that human beings are the center of concerns for sustainable development. Unquote. Echoing the 1972 Stockholm Declaration, it enshrined international cooperation to care for the ecosystem and the entire Earth, the obligation of those who cause pollution to assume its cause, and the duty to assess the environmental impact of given projects and work. It set the goal of limiting greenhouse gas concentration in the atmosphere in an effort to reverse the trend of global warming. It also drew up an agenda with an action plan and a convention on biodiversity and stated principles regarding forests. Although the summit was a real step forward and prophetic for its time, its accords have been poorly implemented due to the lack of suitable mechanisms for oversight, periodic review, and penalties in cases of non-compliance. The principles which it proclaimed still await an efficient and flexible means of practical implementation. Among the positive experiences in this regard, we might mention, for example, the Basel Convention on Hazardous Waste with its system of reporting, standards, and controls. There's also the Binding Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, which includes on-site visits or verifying sector compliance. Thanks to the Vienna Convention for the protection of the ozone layer and its implementation through the Montreal Protocol and amendments, the problem of the layers thinning seems to have entered a phase of resolution. I have to butt in here because that's been disputed recently that it's not been halted, but it's been progressing regularly. They had an idea that maybe there had been a pause, and I won't go deep. I'm going to continue with what he's saying. As far as the protection of biodiversity, and issues related to desertification are concerned, progress has been far less significant. With regard to climate change, the advances have been regrettably few. Reducing greenhouse gases requires honesty, courage, and responsibility, above all, on the part of those countries which are more powerful and pollute the most. The Conference of the United Nations on Sustainable Development, Rio +20, Rio de Janeiro 2012, issued a wide range but ineffectual outcome, a wide-ranging but ineffectual outcome document. That's an interesting way to put it. International negotiations cannot make significant progress due to positions taken by countries which place their national interests above the global common good. Those who will have to suffer the consequences of what we are trying to hide will not forget this failure of conscience and responsibility. Even as this encyclical was being prepared, the debate was intensifying. We believers cannot fail to ask God for a positive outcome to the present discussion, so that the future generations will not have to suffer the effects of our ill-advised delay. Some strategies for lowering pollutant gas emissions call for internationalization of environmental costs, which would risk imposing on countries with fewer resources burdensome commitments to reducing emissions comparable to those of the more industrialized countries. Excuse me, I'm butting in again. You know, like the public having to bail out the bank. Sort of similar. Imposing such measures penalizes those countries most in need of development. A further injustice is perpetuated under the guise of protecting the environment. Here also, the poor end up paying the price. Furthermore, since the effects of climate change will be felt for a long time to come, even if stringent measures are taken now, some countries with scarce resources will require assistance in adapting to the effects already being produced, which affect their economy. In this context, there is a need for common and differentiated responsibility. As the bishops of Bolivia have stated, quote, if countries which have benefited from a high degree of industrialization at the cost of enormous emissions of greenhouse gases have a greater responsibility for providing a solution to the problems they have caused, unquote. The strategy of buying and selling, quote, carbon credits, quote, unquote, can lead to a new form of speculation which does not help reduce the emission of polluting gases worldwide. This system seems to provide a quick and easy solution under the guise of a certain commitment to the environment, but in no way does it allow for the radical changes present circumstances require. Rather, it may simply become a ploy which permits maintaining the excessive consumption of some countries and sectors. You got that right.
He's right on target. I want to bring something out that you brought up that I guess the Pope didn't see that report, and it's not very well widely known. It's about it appears that we've stopped or slowed down the climate change problem. And there was a report that we got. I mean, we get things, we're a small little operation here, but we get things that most people don't get from all over the world. And I want to bring that out right after our next break. And it's about the false, it's not political, it's real. The actual climate has been stabilizing, but it's not a fact. And the reason why it's
cooling somewhat.
Well, no, that's not the case either. What's happening is the warming is going into, I'm going to go into detail on this in about, I have a minute. Maybe I can explain this whole, no, I can't do it in a minute, but it has to do with the oceans sucking up that extra heat. And once it gets to a certain point, the oceans are going to expel that heat, and the global Gesundheit and the global warming is going to be it'll accelerate even Gesundheit even faster. Yes, so I mean, this is terribly important to understand that. We'll be right back after Go ahead.
Finish this section before you take a break.
Okay, go ahead. Yes.
And, right, it's interesting, our oceans are acting as a sink right now, as an absorbing matter and the planet does that. It tries to correct what it feels is an imbalance, and the oceans are serving that function, but they can only serve it to a certain point, and then they have to adjust too. They have to expel. And this change in the temperature of the ocean is also putting stress on the creatures that live in it and depend on certain temperatures for their feeding and reproductive processes and their survival. And all this is being impacted as the oceans try to mitigate the climate situation, keep it a little bit cool enough for whatever, it's a separate system. It's a system that is acting parallel to our species survival, but it doesn't have the same agenda as we have. We don't understand it very well yet. Back to Pope Francis's words. For poor countries, the priorities must be to eliminate extreme poverty and to promote the social development of their people. At the same time, they need to acknowledge the scandalous level of consumption in some privileged sectors of their population and to combat corruption more effectively. They are likewise bound to develop less polluting forms of energy production, but to do so, they require the help of countries which have experienced great growth at the cost of the ongoing pollution of the planet. Taking advantage of abundant solar energy will require the establishment of mechanisms and subsidies which allow developing countries access to technology transfer, technical assistance, and financial resources, but in a way which respects their concrete situation, since, quote, the compatibility of infrastructures with the context for which they have been designed is not always adequately assessed, unquote. The cost of this would be low compared to the risks of climate change. In any event, these are primarily ethical decisions rooted in solidarity between all people. Enforceable international agreements are urgently needed, since local authorities are not always capable of effective intervention. Relations between states must be respectful of each other's sovereignty, but must also lay down mutually agreed means of averting regional disasters, which would eventually affect everyone. Global regulatory norms are needed to impose obligations and prevent unacceptable actions. For example, when powerful companies or countries dump contaminated waste or offshore polluting industries in other countries. Let us also mention the system of governance of the ocean. International and regional conventions do exist, but fragmentation and the lack of strict mechanisms of regulation, control, and penalization end up undermining these effects. The growing problem of marine waste and the protection of the open seas represent particular challenges. What is needed, in effect, is an agreement on systems of governance for the whole range of so-called, quote, global commons. The same mindset which stands in the way of making radical decisions to reverse the trend of global warming also stands in the way of achieving the goal of eliminating poverty. A more responsible overall approach is needed to deal with both problems, the reduction of pollution and the development of poorer countries and regions. The 21st century, while maintaining systems of governance inherited from the past, is witnessing a weakening of the power of nation states. Economic and financial tends to prevail over the political. Given this situation, with functionaries who are appointed fairly by agreement among national governments and empowered to impose sanctions. But I have to stop here. If the governments are being controlled by the economics, how can they make international decisions that'll be fair?
That's the problem. That's where the, oh, wait a second, I'm not on the air here. That's where the HRM comes in. Without a measure,
I just want to pause for a minute there because I want to keep reading. I just wanted to assert that at that point. I didn't want to go into the.
yeah, in other words, you can't ask governments to make laws that are going to benefit humanity if the economic system is controlling the governments.
Right, exactly. As Benedict the 16th of affirmed in continuity with the social teaching of the church, quote, to manage the global economy, to revive economies hit by the crisis, to avoid any deterioration of the present crisis and the greater imbalances that would result, to bring about integral and timely disarmament, food security, and peace, to guarantee the protection of the environment and to regulate migration. For all this, there is an urgent need of a true world political authority, as my predecessor, John the 23rd, indicated some years ago, unquote. So that's okay. This diplomacy also takes on new importance in the work of developing international strategies which can anticipate serious problems affecting us all. So beyond to section 2.
Okay, hold it. Before you go there, I want to take a little break, a 5-minute break. And what I'm going to say that this break is we all, and this is what the Pope asked for, whether you're religious or not, no matter what religion you are, we need to come together. We need to come together as a people. And we need to get our heads out of the sand, look in the mirror and say we have to stop killing one another. And this is where our break song comes in, called We the People. And it's not just the United States, it's the world. And we need to come together with this. And this is We the People by the Foothills Trio. We'll be back in about 5 minutes. If you want to join us after the break, it's 347-215-6731. Bridge to Humanity is open. This is brought to you by Bridges Programming and the HREM, Human Renewable Energy Measure.org.
We the people hand in hand. We the people understand that there's an answer there.
This is the way
Yeah, it's good to see how it functions.
We the people have to stay.
How do people know what's going on? The followers are already on the thing because nobody would know about this unless they were just surfing the web for.
Oh no, this went out to about 1,000, 2,000 people
Who already
who were already part of our mailing list.
Oh, okay.
And they put it out on Facebook. And then if they miss the show, it doesn't matter because they go right to Bridges Programming and it's archived.
Okay.
It's also archived on YouTube under Bridges Programming.
Oh.
So you see what we're seeing and you hear what we're saying.
So if someone was surfing YouTube looking for Pope's encyclical, then
It'll
this would
pop
come
right.
up.
Oh yeah.
Oh, good. Okay.
Matter of fact, once we
Yeah,
get
this is. I mean, I'm trying to kind of get the new media culture, and you know, I mean, I'm part of it already, but it's the same thing with the show I do. It's archived. But there
But
are
you have to-
glitches and things.
you have to know how, even if there's glitches, you need to get to the concept.
Yeah.
And we're trying just to get to the concept. And if we can get the concept out, which is all our goal is,
Yeah.
I mean, after another few more years, we probably won't do this because someone else will take it over.
Yeah.
So this is the important thing about getting this as much information out as we can. And then once it's archived and we get more people interested in it, we don't need to do this anymore. We let other people do it. We need to start a measurement movement. It's not a movement to change anything. It's a measurement. The measurement itself will change things.
Yeah.
But he's saying to do all the things we need to do, but you can't if it's controlled by the economy. It's like putting the fox in charge of the hen house. You know, it's not going to happen.
Repainting the Titanic a different color.
Right.
It's still going to enter the iceberg.
It's still going to hit an iceberg. Not going to head for it. They didn't want to hit it. They just, that's the way it was. You just can't change it.
Because their system, because they were willy-nilly going full speed ahead, because God himself couldn't sink the ship, or it's always been this way, or whatever cliche you want to come up with. When they hit the iceberg, they didn't know what to do, because even though they had all these systems in place, the Titanic had as much by law lifeboats as it's supposed to have. It had the best technology. It had wireless. It had, the top captain of the fleet. They still went to the bottom of the ocean.
No, they didn't pay attention to physics.
Yes.
Physics said if you hit something standing, no matter how well you build it, that force is going to do something. Something's got to give. And what gave was the piece of steel. The thick piece of steel didn't hold up. They had their physics wrong.
They also had cheap metal.
They had the physics were wrong. Whether it's cheap metal or it's expensive metal, it still didn't work.
The Titanic was a perfect example, because then you had the class system, the economic system, and who suffered the most? The people in steerage, the poor people, whereas most of the wealthy were saved. And that's why I don't know. If God has a sense of humor, or God set that up, why did it Titanic sink? Maybe it was an example. But there were other ships that sank too. But
well, do that in war too. You do that in Germany. The wealthy people in Germany, especially in Cuba, the wealthy people always get out because they have the money to do it. And that's been going on since 5,000 years.
I used to play Risk. I used to get Australia, and I'd take two of the pieces that nobody was using. I put them there, one of my pieces. So even if I got taken over, I would always helicopter myself. Because, that's the thing. Of course, I never practiced that. I mean, that's not my philosophy.
Well, it is. The humanity.
I flew, look, it had the biggest impact on me. My father worked for Pan Am. We flew to Barbados when I was a kid. I'll never forget that. And out of the plane, here we're on this beautiful, silver plane.
We're on.
You're muted.
And we are back. This is Bridges Programming. We're here with Jeff
Maybe I should
too.
tell that story.
We're here with Jeff
You want to move
too.
this here?
And let me move this out of the way. We're here with Jeff too, and Jeff too, and Dennis Carrier, Susan Comont, and I'm Jeff Beller.
Maybe I should tell that story.
Well, which one's that?
When I was a child, my father worked for Pan American World Airways, and we weren't wealthy. We were maybe middle class, but we got to travel for free because of my father's position. So we went for a vacation in Barbados, and visualize a 12-year-old kid, middle-class kid, Boy Scouts, Catholic, all that stuff, typical American kid. But my father, because of his position, we had to go down. And I remember, this is one of the things that impacted me, and people that know me, I've told this story. We flew down to Barbados. We get down there in a big silver bird, we look like we're wealthy, and we were compared to those people. In comparison to, the Rockefeller family in America, we wouldn't be anywhere near wealthy. So we get there, and I get to the airport, and we get into the shuttle bus, and we're going to the beautiful Intercontinental Hotel, which was owned by Pan Am. So we got to stay there for free. It was really nice, nice childhood as I look back on it. But I remember looking out the window as we're driving and seeing young, children with no shoes on their feet and people living in a corrugated metal hut. And, why I couldn't really put much thought to it, because, when you're a kid, you don't really have the basis for understanding as you do when you get older and you look back. It always affected me. And I saw this incredible poverty. And the difference is that in the United States of America, our poverty comparatively to, say, what I saw in the 70s in Barbados was there's no comparison, because, we have a society here that has the ability, even if you are down on your luck, you can get shelter, you can get food, you can get sometimes even education. Even people in prisons, we do this for people, because we recognize that a lot of our issues come from the fact that people have, crime and poverty. And we're able to have some systems to do that. But what affected me about my situation in Barbados is it made me think about economy, even though when I was a child, I wasn't really consciously thinking about it. But now that I'm in my middle years, getting more towards the end years, I look back and I say, you know, we should do something to change this, because it shouldn't be this way, not only here in the United States of America, it should be this way. And if we do it, and I defer over here to the measure, if we get this measure in place and we can come up with a fairer, a better economic system in which it's not so top heavy, and in which we do meet the basic needs of people and allow people to be creative and freed of those basic necessities that we need. And this is not communism. We're not talking about communism. A lot of people think about it, and I even sometimes wonder, but of late I've come to the idea that an objective measure, like a measurement of speed and a measurement of energy that we have, British thermal units and those type of things, a way to measure things, if we can figure that out
Based on physics.
Based on physics, the real world. We're not talking about the belief world. We're talking about the real world. And yes, folks, there is a real world. You know, I can believe that gravity doesn't exist, that I can fly off a building, and we've seen people do that. But if I jump off the top of the Empire State Building, I'm going to die.
Or jump off of a four-story building.
Four-story building.
Now, I want to clarify this, because I've been to Barbados, and I've been to Cuba, and I've been to 4 countries. And people in Barbados do not live in corrugated shacks.
Maybe today, this is what I saw.
This is in the 70s.
Yeah.
They have their possessions in corrugated shacks. And a Barbadian said to me, "You guys from the States come over here and you want us to, grow vegetables, and we have a little bit of gold. We keep some gold and we trade with some gold, back and forth. But we don't have a problem like you guys in the States. We get a little bit of conch from the ocean. We have a little bit of gigolo for the people who come in from the States. We get our breadfruits and we enjoy our life."
Yes.
They're more wealthy than we are.
Perhaps they are.
Because we think they have a corrugated box where they keep their possessions in, that they're poor. No, they have their education, their food, their shelter. Their shelter, because Barbados is a magnificent part of the world, they live outside, and the only problem they have is when there's a hurricane. They have to be careful because there's a hurricane. But they don't rebuild homes, because they don't build homes to begin with.
Well, again, it's a comparative model, because I lived in an 18th century farmhouse that had been added onto and things. So it wasn't.
You froze your ass off in the winter time.
Yeah,
and you had to get in, chop out trees to stay alive, and you had to go break your ass to pay.
Well, not when I was
to pay your your father did, to pay your taxes, and he had to go work for Pan Am, which had nothing to do with the farmhouse. And he flew for nothing, and then the impression was, if you stayed in a fancy hotel, you were wealthy. Yeah, well, this is the whole misconception of what we're thinking, and that's totally wrong. Now,
look at people who go to islands today. Look at some Bali and these places where Americans go, and we rebuild roads with Americans' money for the very wealthy, and they live in open air, and they want to hear the island breezes and things like that, and the fact, but they live, or they have these beautiful resorts. I always thought it was weird that you go to a resort and you have the big ocean next to you and you're swimming in a swimming pool, but that's me. But the thing is, you can imagine what the rest of the world thinks about, and even average Americans who scrimp and save for one vacation.
That's because of the brainwashing of our economic system worldwide, and that's because the chase for money. And that's the problem. And that's why we're in the position we're in today. Because of the way you were brought up and the way I was brought up, it takes a lot to get your head around to say, this is not the way you live life. You want to be as comfortable as possible, but having another color TV set doesn't make you comfortable. I mean, my friend was over yesterday.
You only watch one at a time.
No, he's saying you should get a bigger monitor for the thing. And he's right, it would make our life a little easier, but it's not going to change my happiness quotient, or is it going to change my life one bit?
Well, it's rewiring us. I mean, you look at people who are watching multiple channels at the same time. You can't, And, you know, this is a lot of young people say, well, you, because you're old and, you know, you're from the past here. No, you can't. You really can't function and give your full attention if you're doing 15 things at the same time. It's just physically impossible. But that's what's being made to be, oh, you got to have a channel that has multiple, you can watch four channels at the same time, you know, with the clickers and all that stuff. But again, what's happening is we're losing a lot of our happiness quotient because we're so stressed because so much information is coming at us, some of it, much of it wrong, and it's designed to make you upset so that you'll pull out your wallet and buy things to make your life supposedly better because you've been made upset by watching television.
And for a few minutes, again, I'm going to bring out Zeitgeist moving forward. Please look at that if you get a chance. It really brings a lot of the problems out. The Pope has brought a lot of the problems out. We understand the problems, that the solutions must be started with the basic measurement. I'm not saying not to have a bigger TV set. I'm not saying not to have the best technology you can for a car, or if you want a fancy car, get one. If you want to buy fancy clothes, go to it, baby. Do what you got to do, but just don't kill people in the interim. Don't poison the air. Don't poison the water. Don't poison the earth. Just
human.
You know, try to be understanding that when we in the western part of the world wake up, and we kill a lot of people in the eastern part with drones and our lifestyle, the eastern parts of the world, some radical people from the eastern part of the world say we are infidels. And in their eyes, we are. And we are, if you open your mind up, if you have an open mind, you can see where they're coming from. Our lifestyle is creating their behavior. We are killing their people. And then therefore, they're saying if you kill our people because you want to make money, you are in fact infidels. So I'm trying to say that we have to stop doing our lifestyle that kills people and that ruins the planet. And we are doing that. Face up to it. I hate to say that because people get really mad at me. But we need to face the fact. Look in the mirror. We're killing people. We are poisoning our planet. We're poisoning the air. We're poisoning the water. And we're poisoning the earth. And we're doing it in the name of GDP or GNP, gross domestic product or gross national product, to make money, not to benefit humanity and the planet. We got to change that GDP with a measurement on how well we take care of human beings and the planet. Dennis, do you have anything you want to kick in here?
Yeah, Jeff, that's interesting because when we talk about terrorism, I always put it in quotes. When they say those terrorists over there in the Middle East, I think so much of this terrorism is being provoked by our dependence on the oil that's under the ground over there. That's my opinion.
Well, but aren't we doing the same thing in Africa?
Well, that's interesting. Not just Africa. I mean, you made a point before. You said that there's no such thing as global warming or climate change or whatever. And just because it gets warm, I can explain that because what's happening, I mean, global warming just says it's going to keep getting warmer and warmer. And some people say, but wait a minute, it's been cool this week. Well, do you know the oceans are rising? You can't ignore that and say it's not happening. The reason the oceans are rising is way up north and way down south, we have so much ice and snow. It just stayed there all these centuries and millennium. Now, so much of that is melting because of global warming, and it's dropping into the oceans. And that's why the oceans are rising. And also what's happening is because it's dropping in the oceans, it's cooling things down. And people say, hey, look at things are cooler now. But that's only because global warming is melting so much ice and snow way up north and way down south.
Well, the other thing is, if I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute,
I'd like to add something too. Yeah.
I want to play devil's advocate for a minute. That isn't it great that if the oceans rise and more water floods these islands, that those people who are being flooded out would come over here and work for us and buy our land, and then we can make more money on those people. And then how about the fact of the matter is that we can ship a lot easier because now the ice is melting, so we can get across the ocean without hitting icebergs. Wow, what a concept! So we can even ship more stuff to sell. Isn't that a good thing, Dennis?
That's in the grand tradition of making money off of wars and other people's,
misery.
tragedies, et cetera. I mean, that's been going on forever.
But go ahead.
I want to make a point here, and please, those of you who are going to, say nasty things and call me a denier and all these other things, which that's not science, by the way. And I spoke to someone actually from the New York Climate Change Office, and I invited him on a radio show, and he said, well, I'm not going to debate with you. Well, let's go back in history. Right where we are, actually, at one time, there was an ocean above us. And if you go to Gilboa, New York, there's a petrified tropical plant. So long before SUVs and things were around, we are having an effect. And anybody who says we're not having an effect is not looking at science as well. I mean, a lot of it, though, is stuff that is on a localized level, but it does contribute to a global level. But the fact is, the sun is heating up the entire solar system, and the sun has more to do with the effects.
No, I hold it. I don't want to debate that.
I don't want to get into a debate. I'm just saying that's a fact.
I'm
scientific. Right?
No. Here's the why. I used to say the same thing until I listened and I took your point of view. This has been going on for years.
There are changes in climate for
now. Whoa. Now we have people who study this directly, and I said the same thing. And science is always ready for change. Now, the easiest thing I think you can find by looking at this is to go on to the Cosmos series. That he's what was that guy's name from?
Tyson. Yeah.
Tyson. What was his name?
The guy like the old Carl Sagan show.
The Carl Sagan.
Yeah.
And they did they did an 8-part. They did an 8.
Do you want me to say the name of the person?
Yeah.
This is a newer version of Cosmos. In fact, this guy, his name is DeGrasse Tyson. I think he has another first name too, which I can't remember. But he actually met Carl Sagan as a child and was inspired by his work and became an astrophysicist himself. And he has this series of movies, programs on Netflix. Now it's on Netflix. I think it started out on cable or something. But you can access, it's kind of a rapid version of how things have been evolving on this earth, and our little tiny contribution at this point in geological time, which he makes very clear that we haven't been here very long, but we're definitely having an impact on the ecology and et cetera, because they can determine, at this point, scientists can determine where the heat is coming from, that it's not a heat.
It's not the sun.
From the sun.
Well, the sun. I mean, you can't say it's not the sun. The sun has a factor.
No, you can say it's not the sun.
That's
no, you
not
can't.
science.
I would say that to you.
Yeah.
I would agree with you, but however, the reason why I'm saying this is I believe that, and I listen to other climatologists, and I'm not that smart to carry it, but this guy explained it really well. Yes, the sun is not heating up any more than it ever did. And they can show you where on other planets, because we exposed CO2, it blocked out the sun.
Well, we have, this thing called an atmosphere that helps mitigate the sun's rays. Yeah, otherwise we'd be cooked like
Understand
mercury.
something. What you're picking up is the thing that you're arguing against. They've got you so brainwashed That,
that's
no, you have to, and they had me brainwashed too. I'm not saying it's bad.
Jeff, how could, first of all, I learned something a long time ago. All data is theory laden, and if you can't. What I'm saying is you cannot look at heating in the solar system and on planet Earth without factoring in the sun. And I don't hear a lot of it on that. And that's not brainwashing. That might be brainwashing from another point of view.
No, I'm suggesting to you and to anyone listening that I would have believed that it's a natural occurrence. It happens not to be
happening for millions and millions of years.
I'm suggesting to you that if you go to this documentary, they explain it very clearly. Where the average person.
Try to say again what they said.
Go ahead.
We have been tracking the amount of solar energy from the sun scientifically for, ever since we could track it. I don't know how many years now, but maybe
about 100 years.
50, 80, who knows? Yeah. But they've been tracking it, and they can determine if there's been, fluctuations during our human existence on this planet, and it's been a constant, and they expect it to be a constant for another. I think you said how many millions of years, and it's like a pause in the planet's general purposefulness of what it wants to do, and it's like the perfect heat for our existence on this planet and for other plants and animals that are here with us right now, and it's going to continue for a certain period of time, which seems like a lot of time to us because our lives are only maybe 80 years, and so a couple of million years of this sounds like a long time, but in geological time it's a blink of the eye. But that's another subject, but that is a constant right now. What is not constant is the chemical change in our atmosphere that we are producing through our human activity with excessive carbon from burning fossil fuels. And you can see it. This is what is different, and this is what is creating a greenhouse effect out of our. And you can look at that expression up. It's like putting a blanket over the earth and smoke and keeping the heat in. And it doesn't mean that there's going to be warming everywhere. It just means that the climate is going to be much more
overall
volatile and changes in areas that have never seen drought.
But it is a fact.
Well, I want to hear what Jeff says is a fact.
It is a fact that even before, SUVs and burning the fossil fuels and things, climate has changed over time on planet Earth. What I see as a problem is a lot of factors I'm putting into play. For example, the caldera under Yellowstone and volcanic activity underneath the polar caps can also have an effect on this. And a lot of people say, well, that has nothing to do with it.
They actually, whoa. What you're mixing is apples and oranges. Yes, if there is a hurricane, if there is a volcanic ash,
thermal energy.
If you have an eruption, it will definitely cause climate change. If you have a meteor hit this planet, it will cause a climate change. Depends upon how hard it hits.
The Yucatan Peninsula, for example.
Well, but that's not what's doing it. What's doing it's human activity, and it's measured, and because every scientist.
But you can't take away non-human activity, and also what happens is
you can't know if you take away
people's responsibility away from the things that are occurring.
I am not a person who believes in climate change. I don't even believe in the environment. I believe it's economics that control it. Yes. And I can tell you for a fact that the economic system is controlling the climate change in this area, in this planet right now. It is obviously adding to CO2.
Yes, and absolutely. That's a fact.
All we're getting at.
And if you take away
now, I can also guarantee you that if the Yellowstone blows up,
it's going to have a significant effect on the climate.
It's going to wipe out the planet. That could happen.
Big chunk of North America.
But okay, so you have a choice now of continuing to keep doing business as it is now and screwing the rest of the world economically and polluting the planet.
No.
Or you can say, I'm not going to screw the rest of the world and I'm going to stop polluting the planet. And by the way, this is all a moot point, because when and if the world comes to an end because the volcano erupted, or because a meteor hit us, or the sun stops functioning, you're
We
right.
have no control over that.
Right, but so you have a choice.
What
You
I'm
have a
talking about,
choice to use your mind,
Yeah.
as the Pope is suggesting, a God-given mind, and I call it a nature-given mind,
Mhm.
to say we are stupid people. We have no idea of what we're doing, but we have an inkling. We finally grasped the fact that there is such a thing as gravity. We
Mhm.
finally grasped the world isn't flat.
Yeah.
This is just 600 years ago, and it's a blink of an eye. I'm suggesting that the world probably did have a hotter point. We had oceans over the entire world.
Mhm.
Absolutely is, again, a word you don't really understand. It may
No,
not.
it's science. I mean, in fact, we
No,
can,
you
can
don't.
look
You
through,
can't.
if you can look through
This
natural
is as
history
far
and
as we
prove it.
know
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
You can only go by what you know now. As you said, if you jump off of a building of any height, you most probably will die.
Yeah. And that's human activity, by the way. The humans decide to do that.
But you may be able to fly.
In
If
an
you
airplane.
jump off a building, you may just develop wings and fly. I don't believe that'll happen. Or
Not
if
to
you
believe,
walk in
yeah.
front of a bus,
You're going to get hit.
you may die. You may live too.
You may live.
And the bus may stop.
Yeah.
But you don't know that. I mean, you can give me all kinds of scenarios, but giving a scenario that this is what we have people who study it. And there's people who pay people to study it, to get information that's negative information out that we buy. Oh yeah, the world, and I bought into that.
Well, let me give you the middle ground. The
Go.
middle ground is, yes, humans impact the environment. You would be a fool to not believe that. You know, and I used to have a conversation with people who talk about, you know, all these theoretical things and then global warming. And if you're pouring your oil down into your storm drain and it goes into the stream, and that's what motivated me as a child, because that's what they were doing. I saw storm drains with this icky oil coming into the stream that I swam in as a child. And I called the DEC as I think I was 12, maybe 10, 12 years old to report this. And these are the things that humans do that are stupid human tricks, I call them, because you don't need to do that. There's ways in which technology can save us from doing that. You also don't have to live in a grass hut, you know, in the middle of upstate New York. I mean, the fact is that too much we argue over things, and then people throw labels like deniers or, you know, communists. We need to focus on the fact that, yes, there are activities that we do. Vatican does it as well. It's you know, they have, I'm sure they have automobiles and, you know, they burn fossil fuel to heat the place. We need to move on technology, but we need to move away and start throwing attack labels at each other to focus on the real problem. So if you're cutting down all the trees around Athens, and then, you know, the automobile traffic, and then the carbon monoxide is going to go up because you don't have anything to absorb those things. These are things that we understand and we can use. And if we focus on those things, rather than beating each other and saying, you know, you're like a Holocaust denier because you're looking at science and you're applying what you're looking at science as, and there are scientists who disagree with other scientists. That's the beauty of, that's why we don't believe that dead things produce life anymore.
Hold on, I'm going to bring that out. I used to talk about renewable energy,
Mm-hmm.
and I always believed in renewable energy. However, there's two people, one in Cornell University and one in Berkeley, and they were saying the opposite about renewable energy. Now you come to find out where they're funded.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly.
And they're funded by the oil companies. Now, I'll give you the other thing. Lead, we've known forever, lead has been going on since the Roman Empire. They're lead piping.
Mm-hmm.
And we know lead kills people,
Mm-hmm.
and so does mercury. But we're still using lead. And not 50 years ago, they were still saying lead's harmless, and they hired scientists to tell you lead is harmless.
Exactly.
Because it was cheap and they're making money on it. Now, I'm saying to you that we need this, the fossil fuel industry is giving out phony information, whether it's climate change or not.
Mm-hmm.
We need to fix the economic system
Mm-hmm.
so people aren't killing one another. while we're fixing the economic system to get rid of fossil fuel, will also maybe help the climate. But for me to say that I'm smarter than a large portion, I don't know if it's 98%, but a large portion of the scientists who actually study this, a lot of them just follow.
Scientists are human beings too, Jeff,
okay.
and they have opinions, and they also have, they're also
but,
funded. They left out all that data on the mini ice age, that inconvenient truth thing with Al Gore, whose energy consumption, they did studies on this. You want to talk about study, his personal home versus George Bush's, who they claim was they twice the energy.
If you
amount.
go to
Practice what you preach, as I'm saying.
If you go to a personal thing, what someone does or someone not, the overall thinking process is that the planet, by most scientists, a very large proportion of people who will really want to do something. And if you watch Zeitgeist going forward,
I did.
You should see at the end of this, the very end of that, they have people from not scientists who are part of the system. And they've had their scientists tell them, you've got to stop doing this. And these were people these are multimillionaires who were in the energy business. And they're saying, no, these scientists are right. And I'm not smart enough to say,
well, science, you don't have to be smart if you understand the science of things. If I turn the water, I put water on the stove and I turn the heat up, it's going to boil. That's a fact. You don't need to be a brilliant scientist.
But that's what they're telling us right now. If you let the CO2 in the atmosphere, you are literally turning the heat up on the planet. The CO2 is doing exactly what you do when you turn the heat up to boil the water.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You know, scientifically, like the cutting down of the rainforest, that contributes a lot to, and that's human activity that we can definitely see that can affect.
Go ahead, Susan. Go ahead.
Also, in this same series, he does an interesting experiment, which I thought was quite inspired in this Cosmos series. He does something that really helps people start to visualize what's going on. I mean, you can see if water's boiling, but you can't see the carbon dioxide in the air.
Right.
What Nixon does is he shows what if all the carbon dioxide that's being emitted by cars, by factories, by airplanes, etc. What if it were this purple color and we could see it? And then we see this massive, and he shows in his documentary this kind of imaging. And you see this huge, massive purpleness going up into the atmosphere so that people can actually visualize it. It's because carbon dioxide, we can't see it, we can't smell it, we can't, get a sense that it's even happening. It's invisible around us. All we can say, if we're living on the coast, the water's rising and you can't live on certain islands anymore. And, it's certain areas are getting no rain for 10 years or more, or
because of the global warming.
Time ever, but these are like isolated points all over the place.
And on that experiment.
You can see this gas, and you can see where it's coming from, and you can see it going up into the atmosphere and being held like a huge blanket over the earth, and changing the way that our atmosphere can function, which is very complicated right there. And there are all kinds of many people would assert that there are military efforts now to try to control that change that's occurring, and trying to see the atmosphere with various chemicals that they think might mitigate this situation. But we're very, very inept at this kind of thing, because we really don't understand the full chemical interaction that the planet is able to do. But we know when we're we're distorting it, and we know that what we're doing with the excessive contribution of carbon dioxide at this point, that it is having an effect. But he was asserting in his series that if we could just see it, maybe people would understand it better and really believe that it's happening. It's that we can't see it, and people are limited in some respects because of denial and various things in imagining that we as a human species can have this kind of effect. Well, we certainly can.
Well, hold it. I think there's a way we can help this out. First of all, most people don't go to the websites that we spend a lot of our lifetime trying to figure out where the theoretical truth lies. And I think we spend a lot more time than most people. And we maybe look at 20, 30 different websites in the course of a month to get certain information. And I think maybe it would be prudent of us to take that portion of that documentary, lift it off of his website or lift it off of his documentary and put it, just that small 10-minute segment, and put it on our site as a video. Yeah, I think legally we could do that, and that way I don't have to say go watch this whole 10-part documentary. I could show this easily, and they did spend a lot of time on this. Now, maybe why in the world would anyone want to do this, to spend this kind of money and time to show about global warming when there's no money to make in that part? There's tremendous amount of money to make to continue the fossil fuel industry as is. So,
well, you don't get, there's another thing, is you don't get funded in a lot of cases if you're not part of the narrative. And that's a lot of things. And we've seen this with the emails and some of the data that was, kept out. You can't do that and say you're for science, and anybody who challenges us is not for science.
We're not saying that. I'm not disagreeing with you.
That's why we need to move to a more honest.
We're not just saying that.
Discussion.
We're not saying that. We're saying that this is a way that they're showing that global warming is in fact real. That's what that and 3 other documentaries convinced me. I agreed with you for a long time. I said, forget about global warming, just look at the economy of everything. Now I'm now convinced that global warming is man-made and it's directly related to the economy. And here is how it works. What he did is they overlap with a lot of money involved with this to show you where this is coming from. And they show you in the color of purple. Once you see that, you realize, my God, they're right. So if they're right, we need to address it.
But if we're dealing with physics and actual things, you can't say
that the
natural world and the processes that have been around for millions of years and the sun and all the other systems have no effect on it, that it's just human.
You're going to have the end of this planet. There's no doubt about it.
And we do need to change.
You're going to have, the sun is going to stop functioning.
Well, not for a few billion.
Well, that's my point being. But right now,
fortunately,
right now, every day, when we go to over 350 parts per million in CO2, you are warming the planet. You can't see it because it's not visible to you.
No, so, you can see the pollution. I mean,
you can't see the CO2. You can't see the CO2 in the atmosphere.
There's a pilot's report that there is a
there's a report, but you can't see it.
You can see it. I've seen pictures of it.
You can see pictures of it, and
I've seen it flying myself. You see haze over cities all the time.
But you see smog. You don't see CO2. That's not CO2.
But part of that is.
All part is. But what you can see when
I know it's particulate matter mostly.
You can see, right? You can see.
But the CO2 is part of that.
You can see steam when you boil water.
Yeah.
It's visible. You can see smoke when you make a wood fire. It's visible. Now, when you burn carbon, you get a much higher CO2 content. When you burn a carbohydrate, it's not as dense. And what they're saying, if you take the CO2 out of the ground, the carbon,
Yeah.
you're putting CO2 in huge amounts back into the atmosphere. Now, there is a way of you want CO2 in the atmosphere. You can't live without CO2, but you also need to sequester
You have to have
it.
CO2
You
in the
have-
atmosphere.
exactly.
It's part of
You
the
have to-
carbon is the
but if
most
you-
common element.
But if look, if I put you need water to live, right?
Yeah, we're carbon-based creatures.
We're also water. Without water, we will die.
Yeah.
So if I put your head under the water for 5 minutes or 10 minutes,
Yeah.
you got a lot of water, don't you?
And carbon is produced in decay.
No, what
as
I'm
well.
saying
carbon
is
dioxide.
too much. If you don't have it within the measured amount, just
You get too much.
you.
Well, I know that we are. Look, it's. Let me make it straight here. Well, is the Pope going to take a canoe across the Atlantic Ocean? No, he's going to fly. The fact is, but we need to work on technology and making things that are less polluting. But also, we need to face the scientific fact that yes, we do have an effect on the environment. I think I've said that. But the fact is, there's also other factors. And by awareness,
this is the problem.
It's awareness.
This is the problem with what the Pope is doing, and this is intentionally why mainstream media is taking the CO2 thing to get us into a cul-de-sac, to stop talking about the economic portion of what he's saying. So we just got right into the cul-de-sac of what mainstream media and Rush Limbaugh and Fox News and NPR is putting forth
CNN.
to keep us not focusing on the economy, focus on the CO2 problem. And there's our problem.
If you let me bring in Pope Francis's voice at this point, he will address exactly what you're saying.
Go ahead.
Okay. Politics and economy in dialogue for human fulfillment. This is paragraph 189. Politics must not be subject to the economy, nor should the economy be subject to the dictates of an efficiency-driven paradigm of technocracy. Today, in view of the common good, there is an urgent need for politics and economics to enter into a frank dialogue in service of life, especially human life. Saving things at any cost, making the public pay the price, foregoing a firm commitment to reviewing and reforming the entire system, only reaffirms the absolute power of a financial system, a power which has no future and will only give rise to new crises after slow, costly, and only apparent recovery. The financial crisis of 2000-2008 provided an opportunity to develop a new economy more attentive to ethical principles and new ways of regulating speculative financial practices and virtual wealth. But the response to the crisis did not include rethinking the outdated criteria which continue to rule the world. Production is not always rational. It is usually tied to economic variables with assigned to products of value that does not necessarily correspond to their real worth. This frequently leads to an overproduction of some commodities with unnecessary impact on the environment and with negative results on the regional economy. The financial bubble also tends to be a productive bubble. The problem of the real economy is not confronted with vigor yet. It is the real economy which makes the diversification and improvements in production possible, helps companies to function well, and enables small and medium businesses to develop and create employment. Here, too, it should always be kept in mind that, quote, environmental protection cannot be assured solely on the basis of financial calculations of costs and benefits. The environment is one of those goods that cannot be adequately safeguarded or promoted by market forces, unquote. Once more, we need to reject a magical conception of the market, which would suggest that problems can be solved simply by an increase in the profits of companies or individuals. It is realistic to hope that those who are obsessed with maximizing profits will stop to reflect on the environmental damage. Is it realistic to hope that those who are obsessed with maximizing profits will stop to reflect on the environmental damage which they will leave behind for future generations? Where profits alone count, there can be no thinking about the rhythms of nature, its phases of decay and regeneration, or the complexity of ecosystems, which may be gravely upset by human intervention. Moreover, biodiversity is considered at most a deposit of economic resources available for exploitation, with no serious thought for the real value of things, their significance to persons and cultures, or the concerns and needs of the poor. Whenever these questions are raised, some react by accusing others of irrationally attempting to stand in the way of progress and human development. But we need to grow in the conviction that a decrease in the pace of production and consumption can at times give rise to another form of progress and development. Efforts to promote a sustainable use of natural resources are not a waste of money, but rather an investment capable of providing other economic benefits in the medium term. If we look at the larger picture, we can see that more diversified and innovative forms of production which impact less on the environment can prove very profitable. It is a matter of openness to different possibilities that do not involve stifling human creativity and its ideals of progress, but rather directing that energy along new channels. For example, a path of productive development which is more creative and better directed could correct the present disparity between excessive technological investment in consumption and insufficient investment in resolving urgent problems facing the human family. It could generate intelligent, profitable ways of reusing, revamping, recycling, and it could also improve the energy efficiency of cities. Productive diversification offers the fullest possibilities of human ingenuity to create and innovate, while at the same time protecting the environment and creating more sources of employment. Such creativity would be a worthy expression of our most noble human qualities, for we would be striving intelligently, boldly, and responsibly to promote a sustainable and equitable development within the context of a broader concept of quality of life. On the other hand, to find ever new ways of despoiling nature purely for the sake of new consumer items and quick profits would be, in human terms, less worthy and creative and more superficial. In any event, if in some cases sustainable development were to involve new forms of growth, then in other cases, given the insatiable and irresponsible growth produced over many decades, we need also to think of containing growth by setting some reasonable limits and even retracing our steps before it is too late. We know how unsustainable is the behavior of those who constantly consume and destroy, while others are not yet able to live in a way worthy of their human dignity. That is why the time has come to accept decreased growth in some parts of the world in order to provide resources for other places to experience healthy growth. Benedict the 16th has said that, quote, technologically advanced societies must be prepared to encourage more sober lifestyles while reducing their energy consumption and improving its efficiency. Unquote.
Okay, I'm gonna have, we have to bug out here. I want to thank you all for listening. You've been listening to Pope Francis. Dennis, thank you. Susan, thank you. Jeff, too, thank you. Thank you all for listening.
90 seconds.
Tune in again, please, on Friday evening and pass this on to your friends. We need to change the system. We'll be back with you Friday night. Thanks again.
Never quite enough for energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone, what is and you forgot. It all comes down to energy.
60 seconds.
Fossil fuel affects our life like ripples on a lake. Carbon farms and factories and stocks. Price go down and prices soar, our futures are at stake. And when it's gone, it won't come back, and we'll be out of luck. Oh, energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy. We can get our energy from corn and grass and trees. Even trash converts to biofuels. So break loose from the stranglehold of
10
oil
seconds.
companies. Renewables can fuel the world. We're here to spread the news of energy. Energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where money goes. Here's the fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy.